Ethan Clark returned from his son's funeral with shoulders weighed down by grief and 3 days of sleepless sorrow. He stepped onto his own porch, still wearing the wrinkled black suit from the burial, and pulled out the house key he'd used for 11 years. The metal scraped against the lock with a sound that didn't belong. Wrong angle, wrong resistance, wrong everything. Ethan blinked hard, thinking exhaustion was playing tricks on him. But when he tried again, the key wouldn't slide in. That was the moment he realized something was terribly, deliberately wrong. Before Ethan could knock, the door swung open from the inside. His daughter-in-law Megan stood there wearing tight jeans and a red blouse he'd never seen before. She smiled in a way that felt sharp, a smile that didn't touch her eyes. "Can I help you?" she asked, as if he were a stranger on the street. Ethan kept his voice steady. "Why doesn't my key work?" Megan leaned against the doorframe like she owned it. "Because this is my house now," she said calmly. "My husband is gone. Everything he had belongs to me." Ethan stared at her, disbelief paddling against the grief still drowning him. That morning he had stood over his son Daniel's grave, hands shaking as the casket lowered into the earth. Now he was being told to leave his own home by the woman his son had been trying to divorce. "You need to stop talking and start listening," Ethan said quietly, the command tone from 30 years as a firefighter slipping back into place. "That lock you changed, it's on my door. My house." But Megan only scoffed and crossed her arms. "Daniel bought it. That makes it mine." Before Ethan could respond, a man he had never seen walked out of the living room holding a beer from Ethan's own refrigerator. He had a thick neck, tattooed arms, and the swagger of someone who had never been told no. "You heard her, old man," the stranger said. "Get gone." Ethan didn't move. "Who are you?" he asked. "I'm Tyler," the man replied proudly. "Her boyfriend." Ethan's chest tightened. Daniel had mentioned a boyfriend in their last call, the reason Megan moved out months earlier. Now the man was drinking beer in Ethan's house like he owned it. "You're making a mistake," Ethan said, looking past them and seeing his furniture moved around and boxes stacked everywhere. They had already begun moving in. Megan jabbed a finger at him. "Daniel was my husband. That makes this my property. You're trespassing." Ethan pulled out his phone. "You're wrong. I bought this house in 2012. Daniel lived here, but the deed was never in his name." For the first time, Megan's confidence flickered. Then footsteps sounded behind Ethan. He turned, and a woman stepped beside him, calm, steady, holding a folded document in one hand. "This," Ethan said, "is Lily. Daniel's real wife." Megan's mouth fell open like someone had pulled the floor out from under her. She stared at Lily as if the world had suddenly rewritten itself. "That's impossible," she whispered. But Lily kept her calm. "Daniel and I remarried on January 8th, she said softly. She held up the certified marriage certificate, the county seal shining in the sunlight. Megan lunged to grab it, but Lily stepped back, keeping it out of reach. "This is real," she said. "And it changes everything." Tyler's posture shifted, his broad shoulders dropping a little as confusion crept into his face. "What is this?" he muttered. "He was married to her?" Ethan nodded. "Legally, yes." Megan shook her head violently. "No. Daniel told me, he told you what you wanted to hear," Ethan replied. "But the truth is written on paper, not in promises whispered during arguments." Megan's eyes darted everywhere, desperate for an escape from the truth pressing down on her. Ethan raised his phone. "Let's settle this properly," he said. "We'll call the police." Tyler stepped forward again, puffing up his chest. "You better back up, old man." Ethan didn't move an inch. "So you want to assault me on my own property?" he asked quietly. "While drinking my beer?" Tyler's jaw tensed, but he didn't answer. Lily stood taller beside Ethan, her calmness a sharp contrast to the chaos unfolding. "Call them," Megan spat. "I'm not scared." Ethan pressed the call button, put the phone on speaker, and explained the situation to the dispatcher. Megan, panicking, grabbed her phone and shouted her own version, calling Ethan a trespasser and a liar. Neighbors' curtains began to twitch as voices echoed across the porch. When Ethan finished, the dispatcher asked everyone to wait outside until officers arrived. Megan tried to slam the door shut, but Tyler blocked it with his arm. "They're not leaving," he told her. "If the cops are coming, we handle it here." 20 long minutes passed. Ethan and Lily stood on the porch while Megan and Tyler hovered in the doorway like guard dogs. When the patrol car finally pulled up, 2 officers stepped out, calm, practiced, ready for anything. Ethan explained first, showing his driver's license with the home address and stating he had returned from his son's funeral to change locks. Megan jumped in immediately, waving her old marriage certificate like a battle flag. The officers listened, glanced at each other, and delivered a verdict that stunned Ethan more than anyone. "Sir, this is a civil matter. Without a court order, we can't remove her." Ethan's heart dropped, and he tried to stay calm as the taller officer explained, "Sir, she's claiming legal residence. We can't force her out today." Megan grinned instantly, folding her arms like she'd already won. "Thank you, officers," she said sweetly. "I appreciate you explaining the law to these people." Tyler took another drink of Ethan's beer and smirked at him from inside the doorway. Lily stepped closer to Ethan, lowering her voice. "We'll fight this," she whispered. Ethan nodded, but the weight of the moment pressed hard against his chest. The officers documented the scene, took everyone's ID, then left with a promise that the matter had to go through court. The moment the patrol car rolled away, Megan leaned her head out the door. "Come back with a court order," she taunted. "Until then, you're trespassing." She slammed the door so hard the windows rattled. Ethan stared at the closed door of the home he had paid for alone. Lily touched his arm gently. "Let's go," she murmured. They walked to the car in silence, grief and anger merging inside him like a storm. The hotel room they checked into was small, 2 beds, thin carpet, and the smell of old cleaning spray. Ethan sat at the small desk, staring at the wall as Lily dropped her bag onto the bed. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I should have come forward earlier." Ethan shook his head. "You didn't know she'd do this." The truth was, neither of them knew the depths Megan would sink to. He reached for the notepad in the drawer, flipping to a blank page. "We'll take this step by step," he said. "She wants a fight. She'll get one." The next morning, Ethan met the attorney, Mr. Harris, who examined the deed, the tax records, and Daniel's updated marriage documents. "The house is legally yours," Harris said firmly. "She has no claim. We'll file for eviction today." Ethan nodded, relief and exhaustion blending together. "How long will it take?" 2 to 3 weeks for the hearing. Maybe a month to remove her." Ethan inhaled deeply. A month felt like a lifetime, but it was the only path forward. "Do what needs to be done," he said. "I just want my home back." After the courthouse stamped the paperwork, Ethan walked out into the bright Arizona sun feeling both hopeful and drained. He made 2 more calls, one to the electric company, one to the water authority, both under his name, both legally his to control. By the afternoon, the house Megan claimed was hers went dark and silent. That evening, Ethan sat on the edge of the hotel bed, waiting. At 5:42 p.m., his phone rang. Megan's number flashed. "What did you do?" she screamed. "The power's out. The water isn't running." Ethan lifted the phone calmly. "Pay the bill, and I'll restore it." "You can't do this," Megan shrieked, but Ethan stayed calm. "It's my house. My accounts." Megan's voice broke into a furious hiss. "I'll call the police." "Call them," Ethan said. "Tell them you're living in a home you don't own and want the real owner to pay for your utilities." Silence followed, angry, shaky silence. Then she hung up. Lily, sitting across the room, raised her eyebrows. "She didn't think you'd do it." Ethan exhaled slowly. "She doesn't know me." A week passed, each day heavier than the last. Hotel bills grew, but Ethan endured them like a soldier in a long war. Lily worked double shifts, returning exhausted but supportive. On the 8th morning, Ethan sat at the desk watching dawn rise when his attorney called. "She filed a protection order," Harris said. Ethan's jaw tightened. "For what?" "She claims you threatened her." Lily looked up sharply, disbelief in her eyes. "He was here the whole time." Harris sighed. "I know. But we have to fight it." The hearing lasted only minutes. The judge dismissed the protection order after reviewing phone logs, hotel receipts, and Lily's statement. Megan, forced to sit alone at the defendant table, glared at Ethan as if he'd stolen her future. When the judge adjourned, Ethan walked out feeling something shift inside him. Megan wasn't just stubborn, she was strategic. Every move was meant to delay the eviction, to buy more weeks of free living. Ethan stopped on the courthouse steps, eyes narrowing. "She's not just fighting," he murmured. "She's planning." Realizing he needed leverage, Ethan hired a private investigator, a quiet older man named Grant who knew how to dig where others wouldn't. "Find out everything about Tyler," Ethan said. "Everything." Grant nodded and disappeared into the world of records and databases. 3 days later, he returned with a folder thick enough to change the war. Tyler had warrants, unpaid child support, and a long list of ignored court summons. Grant tapped the paper with one finger. "One call, and the police will pick him up," he said. Ethan closed the folder slowly. "Then that's what we'll do." 2 days later, Ethan parked 3 houses away from his own home and watched police cars arrive quietly. He saw Tyler open the door, confused, then angry, then helpless as officers cuffed him for his outstanding warrants. Megan screamed at the officers, blaming Ethan, blaming the world, blaming anyone but herself. But Ethan didn't flinch. As the patrol car drove away with Tyler in the back seat, Megan stood alone on the porch of a house with no water, no power, and no protection. Ethan started his engine, knowing the balance of power had finally shifted. Megan's confidence crumbled the moment Tyler was taken away. That night, Ethan received 3 missed calls from her, then a shaky voicemail. "Please, just give me a month. I'll pay the utilities. I'll do anything." Ethan listened once, then deleted it. The memory of her standing in his doorway after his son's funeral burned too deeply. Lily placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "She's scared now," she said softly. Ethan nodded. Fear isn't the same as remorse. With Tyler gone, Megan began to panic. She tried calling friends, co-workers, even distant relatives, anyone who might take her in if she lost the house. But each day, her voice cracked more. Still, she didn't leave. On the afternoon before the eviction hearing, Ethan found himself staring at the hotel ceiling, unable to sleep. "Tomorrow decides everything," Lily murmured from her bed. Ethan nodded slowly. "It's time to end this." His voice held no anger now, only resolve. The courthouse felt smaller this time, quieter, almost expectant. Megan arrived alone, clutching wrinkled papers, her hair unwashed, her clothes dull and tired. She looked nothing like the woman who had smiled in his doorway weeks earlier. Attorney Harris presented Ethan's case clearly: deed, tax history, proof of ownership. When Megan tried to argue, her voice trembled. "He's lying," she muttered weakly. "Daniel wanted me to have the house." The judge leaned forward. "Do you have any documentation?" Megan froze. "No," she whispered. The judge reviewed the documents carefully, then lifted her gaze. "The evidence is clear. Mr. Clark is the sole owner of the property. Ms. Megan, you are ordered to vacate within 5 days." The gavel struck once, final and echoing. Megan's face collapsed into her hands, her shoulders shaking. Ethan stood slowly, breathing deeply. Lily squeezed his hand. "It's almost over," she whispered. Ethan hoped she was right. 5 days passed without a single box moved from the house. Not one sign that Megan intended to leave. Ethan expected it. On the morning sheriff's deputies were scheduled to arrive, Ethan and Lily parked across the street, the sun casting long shadows across the neighborhood. "Are you ready?" Lily asked cautiously. Ethan nodded. "I've been ready since the day she changed my locks." 2 sheriff SUVs pulled up at exactly 9:30 a.m. The deputies approached the front door and knocked 3 times, loud, professional. "Sheriff's Department. We have a court order." "Open the door." Inside, they heard footsteps and frantic muttering. Megan's voice cracked through the door. "You can't do this. I have rights." The deputies gave one final warning. When she refused to open the door, one officer lifted a heavy ram. 3 strikes later, the door flew inward, splintering at the hinges. Megan screamed as deputies entered the house. Within minutes, deputies escorted her outside, not handcuffed but firmly held. "Ma'am, you are trespassing," one officer said calmly. "You will remain outside." Megan collapsed onto the lawn, shaking. Then began the removal. Deputies carried every item Megan owned: bags, clothes, furniture, boxes packed with things she'd taken from Ethan's closets. Pile by pile, the lawn filled. Neighbors peeked out from behind curtains or stepped onto porches, whispering. Megan buried her face in her hands as the mountain of belongings grew. By noon, the locksmith arrived to replace the locks. He nodded to Ethan respectfully. "All new hardware," he said. "Only you have the keys now." Ethan accepted the keys, feeling their weight in his palm. Across the street, Megan stood among her belongings, calling person after person. "Please, can I stay with you? Just for one night." Her voice cracked with each rejection. "I understand, okay, thank you anyway." Lily watched quietly. "She's hit the bottom," she murmured. Ethan didn't answer. When the deputies finished, they gave Ethan a final nod. "Your property is clear, sir." Ethan walked up the driveway slowly, feeling both tired and relieved. The house smelled of dust, spoiled food and anger, but it was his again. He opened the windows to let light in. Lily followed behind him as they surveyed the damage: broken mirror, cracked toilet tank, holes punched in the walls. Each mark was a reminder of Megan's bitterness. "She wanted to hurt the house," Lily said. "She couldn't hurt you." Ethan photographed everything carefully. Within hours, a small car pulled up to collect Megan and her belongings. She loaded boxes with trembling hands, her movements slow and defeated. Before leaving, she stood on the curb staring at Ethan. "You destroyed my life," she said hoarsely. Ethan looked at her gently but truthfully. "I took back what was always mine." Megan swallowed hard, then turned away. The car door slammed, and the vehicle drove off, leaving the street quiet again. Lily touched Ethan's arm. "It's done now," she whispered. Ethan wished he believed her. For the next few days, Ethan worked quietly through the house with Lily. They repaired walls, repainted rooms, fixed broken fixtures, and threw out the last traces of Megan's anger. As Ethan patched a hole in Daniel's old bedroom, he paused and whispered. She tried to erase him. Lily placed a hand on his back. "She couldn't," she said softly. "This house remembers good things, not destruction." Ethan nodded, feeling the truth settle in his chest like warm sunlight. When the house finally looked whole again, Ethan sat at the kitchen table and opened his mail. One envelope, stamped with a legal office seal, made his stomach tighten. Inside was a lawsuit, Megan claiming emotional distress and demanding money. Ethan exhaled slowly, rubbing his forehead. Lily read the papers beside him. "She's trying one last time." Ethan closed the folder carefully. "Then we'll finish this one last time." His voice was calm, not angry anymore, just steady. Attorney Harris studied the lawsuit and shook his head. "This is nonsense. We'll fight it easily, but it will take time." Ethan nodded. "Do whatever must be done." 3 weeks later, they stood in another courtroom. This time Megan wasn't fierce or loud. She looked smaller, thinner, like someone who'd run out of battles. Her lawyer spoke nervously, stumbling through weak claims. When Megan took the stand, her voice cracked on nearly every sentence. "He ruined my life," she said quietly. Harris rose calmly. "Ms. Megan, you had no legal claim on the house. You refused court orders. You damaged property. You changed locks illegally. You lived there without paying a single bill. Explain how you were wronged." Megan stared down at her hands. I don't know." The courtroom fell silent. Harris continued with documents, photos, and witness statements. Every lie Megan tried to tell collapsed under the weight of Ethan's evidence. The judge listened carefully, expression unreadable. Finally, the judge spoke. "This lawsuit is dismissed with prejudice. Ms. Megan, you owe Mr. Clark $5,800 in attorney fees. You may not file again." Megan gasped, covering her face. Ethan sat still, letting the decision wash over him like cool air after a fire. Lily squeezed his hand. "It's over," she whispered. Megan left the courtroom with slow, heavy steps, her head bowed. It was the first time Ethan didn't feel anger toward her, only sadness for what she had become. That evening, Ethan sat on his restored porch, watching the sky shift from gold to deep orange. Lily joined him with 2 cups of warm tea. "You fought longer than anyone should ever have to," she said gently. Ethan nodded. "I didn't fight for revenge," he murmured. "I fought to protect what Daniel cherished." Lily leaned her head on his shoulder. "And you did." For the first time in months, Ethan felt his breathing slow, steady, peaceful. 3 days later, Ethan received a message from Deputy Morrison, the same deputy who had handled the eviction. Thought you should know, the message read. Megan moved to another state. Filed bankruptcy. She won't be back. Ethan stared at the screen for a long moment. Then he set the phone aside and looked around his living room, the place where laughter had once echoed, where Daniel used to sit on the couch eating cereal at midnight. Rest now, son, Ethan whispered. Your home is safe. The following weekend, Ethan's granddaughter Emily visited. She stood in the doorway, eyes wide. Grandpa, it looks beautiful. Ethan smiled softly. It looks like home again. Emily hugged him tightly, her voice trembling. I'm sorry I stayed away while everything was happening. Ethan shook his head. You came when you could. That's enough. They walked through the house together, room by room, finally stopping at Daniel's photograph on the mantel. Emily touched the frame gently. That night, Ethan and Lily sat on the porch again, watching the stars settle into the sky. The heat of the desert evening softened into a gentle breeze that brushed across their faces. You know, Lily said quietly, Daniel always believed you were the strongest man he knew. Ethan swallowed hard, blinking back sudden warmth in his eyes. I just did what a father does. Lily nodded. And you did it well. For the first time since the funeral, Ethan allowed himself to feel proud. When morning arrived, Ethan stepped outside with his coffee and looked at his home, solid, peaceful, his again. The long battle, the fear, the anger, the sleepless nights, all of it had finally settled like dust after a storm. He breathed in deeply, touched the railing of the porch and whispered, "It's over." Then he turned toward the camera inside the house, smiled softly, and said the words he'd said 100 times. If you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. And thank you for listening. The sun rose behind him, and the story of Ethan Clarke finally found its ending.